Hey everyone, it's Bobby from Lyco Birds, and this is the first real video in my Bird ID Through the Year series, where I am covering timely bird identification topics using the natural cycle of the seasons. And I wanted to start off with the woodpeckers. If you missed the intro video to the series, I'll link that in the description, but the general idea is I want to keep this accessible to beginners, and the topics are going to be beginner and intermediate level, generally around the Pennsylvania area, so no western birds. But woodpeckers are a good place to start because everybody kind of has a concept of what a woodpecker is, but there's also some misconceptions and some misidentifications that happen. So if we jump in, I will start with red-headed woodpecker, and this is one of my favorite species, and it's a good place to start with the woodpeckers because really you're dealing with just solid patches of color. So you can see it has a completely solid red head and neck. It has a solid white underside, also solid black on the upper side, but then it has this white patch in the wings as well. And you can see it's the same exact things to look for on the flight shots. So you have the solid red head, the black on the upper side of the wings, you have this white patch here, and if it's not clear, this white patch in the wing is what is showing right here on the closed wing when the bird is perched. You can also see from the underside, you have this solid white body. So these are very striking birds, and just the thing you want to keep in mind, it's the solid red head, and there's just no patterning at all. It's solid blocks of color, so there's no spotting, no barring, or anything like that. And these are probably the least common of the woodpeckers that we'll cover for Pennsylvania. And oftentimes I'll hear people say that they saw a red-headed woodpecker, and it's not always clear if they truly saw a red-headed woodpecker or they just saw a woodpecker with red on the head, which if you stick with me, you'll see most of the woodpeckers do have red on the head. Some of the females don't, but all of the males do. So that's just something you want to keep in mind, that red-headed woodpecker refers specifically to this species. And if we move on now to red-bellied woodpecker, you can see largely the structure is pretty similar, but remember how I was saying it's just solid blocks of color on red-headed woodpecker? Well, red-bellied woodpecker has a very textured back here with the black and white barring. It does have a solid light underside. It's maybe not as pure white as red-headed woodpecker, but it's still pretty clean, and depending on the light, it can look pretty white. All of them have red here in the back of the neck, which is called the nape, but the males actually do have extensive red all the way from the nape to the base of the bill. So this is one of the species that really could be confused with red-headed woodpecker just because of the extent of the red here. But notice how the cheeks stay clean compared to red-headed woodpecker. There's that solid red. And just for the sake of clarity, the females do have kind of this gray on the crown, not the red that the males have. And you might be wondering where it gets its name. Well, it does have a little bit of a red belly, but you really can't see that very often, and it's not very useful for identifying them. You can see it again in this flight shot. And one other feature I will point out, you can see it kind of has these white crescents in the wings when you see them in flight. And moving on to kind of an oddball, this is northern flicker, and you'll hear about two populations of northern flicker. There is yellow-shafted, and those are found in the east, including Pennsylvania, and then there's red-shafted that you find out west. So we're going to focus on the yellow-shafted, but overall they are brown and tan, and they have all this dark spotting on the underside. There's also kind of this black triangle at the upper chest, and they have a red triangle then on the back of the head. One of the features you'll often hear mentioned with flickers is this white rump, and they also do have yellow feather shafts, which is where yellow-shafted comes from. Now, when we're talking about the white rump, that's actually something you want to be careful with because remember, if we go back to red-bellied woodpecker, you can see the same feature, but with flickers, you tend to see the rump a little bit more often because they spend a lot of time on the ground, which is a little bit weird for woodpeckers. You really don't think of them as spending a ton of time on the ground normally, but flickers do. They'll be out in just mowed grass right out in the open. And one other thing you might want to know is that the males have a black mustache, whereas the females don't have anything in that same location. Now we can move on to our largest woodpecker, which is Pileated Woodpecker, or sometimes you'll hear Pileated Woodpecker. There's not really an agreed upon pronunciation of that, so it's just whatever your preference is. These are large and they're prehistoric looking, and just really cool birds. They have a pretty much completely solid black body, and they have this big red crest, both the males and the females. The males have red that continues from the crest all the way to the bill, much like you saw on red-bellied woodpecker, and again, the females don't have any red in that same area. And you can see the white on Pileated Woodpecker kind of runs up the side of the neck and the face, but then there's also big white patches in the open wing, both on the bottom where it's very extensive and also the top where it's a little less extensive. Moving on to Yellow-bellied Sapsucker. These are actually quite variable compared to the other species, but the general idea is that they have kind of a yellowish underside, which you might have inferred from the name. They also have a mottled back. You can see just usually it's kind of yellow still, but there's definitely mottling that you don't see on other species. And the real key for sapsuckers is the white stripe in the wing. So you can see that from most angles. You can't really see it from the front here, but you can definitely see it in most views when you see a bird perched on a tree, or also in flight. It's pretty obvious as well. And in terms of male versus female, because the plumage is pretty variable, I wouldn't focus too much on that, but in general, the males have red in the throats, the females don't, but then there's immature plumages and whatnot that complicate things, so especially for beginners, I would just focus on making sure you're identifying it to species. So again, the keys, really, you want to look for this stripe. And there's other sapsuckers that also have that, but they're all out west, and there's not any other species that you would expect to be occurring in the east that are showing that for the woodpeckers. And I probably will come back to immature and juvenile plumages of woodpeckers more in the summertime, so I would expect to be publishing another video about that where maybe we can go into some of these other sapsucker plumages other than just the straight adult male and female plumages. And lastly, we will look at Downy woodpecker and hairy woodpecker. Now these two are very similar looking in terms of plumage. They have white undersides, and the upper sides are mostly black with some white markings. And also they have red on the back of the heads for the males. The females don't have any red there. And just very quickly, hairy woodpeckers are larger and have longer bills. Downy woodpeckers are smaller and have small bills. But really, these are similar enough that they deserve their own video. So I will actually post my next video covering these two species and how to separate those. So I hope you will join me as we progress through this series. And if you want to stay in touch, I do offer a daily bird ID quiz email that goes out every single morning. If you're interested in that, it's likeobirds.com/email. It's free, easy to unsubscribe, and also any videos that we post will also be included in that email, so you definitely won't miss anything if you sign up for that. So I hope you will join me in future videos, and thanks for watching.